Call it an unwritten rite of passage. No sooner has a new leader in Paris or Berlin been sworn in, they cross the Rhine for dinner and a date. Wedged between her swearing in and Thursday's EU summit in Brussels, Angela Merkel is in Paris. Merkel 3, you might say, re-elected twice, this time with a huge 42% of the vote, but short of an outright majority. Back in a grand coalition with the opposition Social Democrats, same as in 2005. We'll gauge how much times have changed since Merkel's last GroKo, as they call it there, what France's socialist president can hope for in the relationship with Berlin, what Europe can hope, the first order of business being new rules on how to save governments from having to write blank checks every time a mismanaged bank faces collapse. More broadly, we'll see how Paris and Berlin are handling the growing power imbalance between Germany and the rest of the continent. Today in the France 24 debate, Germany's plan for Europe, and with us to talk about it from Berlin, Joachim Bitterlich, former advisor to Helmut Kohl, German ambassador as well to NATO. Thank you for being with us here in the studio. Matthias Feckel, member of parliament here in France, Franco-German, born in Berlin, but you represent the southwestern district of Marmande. Thank you for being with us. Also with us is Jean-Paul Betbez, banker, founder of Betbez Advisors. Welcome back to the show. And welcome back as well to Laurent Pinsol of the neo-Gaullist Debout la République party. How would you translate that into English?
Stay ahead, Republic.
Oh, okay. Stay ahead, the Republic. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Joachim Bitterlich, the trip to Paris by Merkel, it really has become sort of an unwritten rite of passage. Do you think it's a bit contrived, or this is absolutely positively necessary to do this?
It's on the one hand a clear tradition of German chancellors in German politics, but at the same time, this is, I think, it's a good step to show clearly to the French that the Franco-German relationship is and remains the basis of Germany's European policy.
But so the Angela Merkel who shows up at the Élysée Palace this Wednesday, I mean, is she a different Angela Merkel than the one before she'd signed her grand coalition agreement?
I don't think it's a different Angela Merkel. It's Angela Merkel free, yes, but under different auspices. Don't forget the three reasons why Mrs. Merkel has been, from the beginning, engaged to form this so-called Great Coalition. Three subjects: Europe, energy policy, and the renewal of a German federal financial system. Three areas where she needs the opposition, where it's better for her, in her view, to go with the Social Democrats, who have a majority in the second German chamber in the Bundesrat.
Matthias Feckel, the Merkel who has just won a huge mandate, 42% of the vote, yet in tow, she's got all these friends of François Hollande. Hollande went to campaign for the Social Democrats. Social Democrats came to campaign for him. Does that in any way whatsoever change Berlin's policies?
There's one time for debate, democratic debate, and then there's the time for action. And now is the time for action after the German election. It was a strong sign for Chancellor Merkel because it was a personal victory for her what happened in September. But now there is a grand coalition, which is a German model, which we don't have in that kind in that sort here in France. And there is a very precise roadmap that has been signed between the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats to go forward in Germany and to go forward in Europe. And now what we have to do, France and Germany together, is to find ways to continue to build a strong European Union, to answer all the concrete questions that are raised today about economic policy, about banking policy, about youth unemployment. And so that's what is ahead of President Hollande and Chancellor Merkel.
Of course, nowhere does it say in that detail, what is it, 170 pages? It's
Yes, even a bit more, I think.
Maybe even more. Nowhere does it say loosen the purse strings, stimulate consumer spending, the things that the French would like to hear, the Germans saying.
There is an important plan for public investment. There is the minimum wage. This is a complete revolution when you look at German history, at German social relations between employers and employees. And so there are lots of things that are going forward in the right way for German, of course, but that's a German choice, but also for Europe. And the minimum wage will have very important consequences in France, in other countries. I think this is very important. We should not underestimate it.
Jean-Paul Betbez, the minimum wage in Germany?
Well, we do not have, in my mind, to overstate it because it will have consequences in the service sector. Okay, but the big story is the grand coalition. But the grand coalition is between France and Germany. And if we do not have a grand coalition between France and Germany, the European story doesn't work very nicely. And this is, in my mind, what is very important.
Do we have right now a grand coalition between France and Germany?
Well, what happens is, for years, it has been a grand coalition. Of course, it is all, of course, difficult, different, questionable, but it's time it works. And each time you have questioned: are we supposed to leave? Are we supposed to how is it supposed for France to be there? Germany is supposed to leave. We know this every day. We read this. But what happens is that since the beginning, it worked. So we worked with the Grand Coalition, and the Grand Coalition is the source of Europe.
Like the German Grand Coalition, there's one partner who's stronger than the other, Laurent Pinsol.
Clearly, there is one partner that is stronger, and Germany has grown stronger in the last years, and right now it dictates the European policy, because Angela Merkel has been fighting very well to defend the German national interests, and right now she's just willing to ensure that the money that Germany has guaranteed with the different European mechanisms is going to be reimbursed, and so that no German money will be needed to fund other countries.
So she's putting Germany first, which is understandable. After all, she's German. But if we take Jean-Paul Betbez's analogy further, would you like to see the French and the Germans sign a detailed coalition pact as well?
No, I don't think, because the countries are completely different. And I think the German and French example is very good, because Germany and France are so different. We have a very different demography, so we do not have the same needs. France needs one additional point of growth every year in order to reduce unemployment, to fund its schools. And so we have different economic needs, and therefore we cannot agree on a single, unique policy. It won't fit. So we need to discuss, and the German-French friendship is very important, and we need to work together. But we also need to ensure that the differences between the countries are taken into account, which is not the case right now.
Not the case right now. We're going to pick up on that point in a moment. At the outset of the show, Joachim Bitterlich making the point that Europe was one of the three big priorities of this new Grand Coalition in Germany, a point hammered home by Angela Merkel before the German parliament this Wednesday morning, before she flew to Paris.
This will allow us to deepen bilateral cooperation, projects which will strengthen Europe, but also France and Germany. This will bring our civil societies closer, but will also show that we can achieve more for the people in our countries when we work together than we can when we work alone.
Joachim Bitterlich, what projects is she talking about?
I think Angela Merkel's project on Europe is in the same line as she has been defending in the last years. To complete the economic and monetary union with this double subject, on the one hand responsibility and on the other hand solidarity. And I think this remains the guideline of this new German government, as it has been in the past. You will see certain openings on the social side, but I think this new government will stick to its classical line. By the way, I don't think it's correct to speak about Germany dominating Europe. Everyone is defending its national interests. France is doing it, and no one is talking about. Once the Germans do it, well, suddenly the French asking themselves what's going on with Germany. But please don't expect too much on the German side. Try to come together and try to build, let's say, common, defendable, constructive lines on Europe in the coming months.
Not right to expect too much from the Germans. Jean-Paul Betbez, are the Germans holding up their end of the bargain?
Yeah, the question is, they have a strategy, and they have a long-lasting strategy, which is not our case. And when you have this kind of common story and common strategy, which is Europe, with a common currency, you know the story, so you have to behave. And what happened in that...
Hang on, but the French don't have the same strategy? Don't have a long-term strategy, you're saying?
They don't have.
But we've seen, for instance, and we'll talk about it later if you want, on this Wednesday, they've come to an agreement on terms of a banking union.
Yeah, this I know, but we are paying now the consequences of years and years in which we were not serious enough on budget deficit, on expenses, on wages or something like that. And this has a price. When you cannot depreciate your own currency, France depreciated its own currency something like 14 times, okay? And now the story is, it is over. So you have to act accordingly because you do not have this kind of solution, which is devaluation. So you have to change the rule of the game. And if you have another country who doesn't understand this, of course, you are in a worse situation afterwards. So you say, for example, they dominate. I don't buy this. They understand and they play the rule of the game. And we did not do it. Now we have to improve our situation. What we are doing. So my understanding is that France is, in my mind, better understanding the rule of the game, how to build up Europe.
But it's not proving very popular with the voters, is it, Matthias Fenko, when you start to pay attention to deficits and when you start to tighten your belt?
For years and years, there has been no attention to deficits and to debt reduction. And today, this is why we are in this terrible situation. I think I agree on one point. It's a complete misunderstanding of Germany, of its history and of its present, to think that they want to dominate Europe. They don't want to dominate. They do, in fact, have a very important influence because they are the strongest economy today. And so what we have to do here in France is to work on competitiveness, to boost our economy, because we need a stronger economy. And what Germany has been able to do in these last years is to have more quality in products, in the way they produce, in the way they have innovation, the way they have exportation. This is the important thing to do in the next years.
But have they done enough to stimulate consumer demand?
No, and that's what they are doing now. When you see Germany is strong in the industry and in exportation. They are very weak today in the service sector, where you have poor workers, where you have lonely moms who are in awful conditions, and that's what they're trying to repair now with minimum wages in the service sector, and so they have this attention on consumer policy in their country, and they will also see that an important part of the exportation is done with Europe, and so they need consumption in Europe.
But they are in a position, they can do it. You know, the question is, what I say, when you have a strategy, when you are strong in exports, when you have strong in industry, and you understand that you are weak in services, you say, I can repair it. So they are repairing it, in a sense, for the good of Europe and for the good of Germany, of course. But they can afford it. And I think it is important. You have not to say they did it for us, or no, they did it for Germany as well. It's a good story. This is important. They are acting, in my mind, with a long-term long-term sustainable strategy. They know that they are aging. They know that they have some weaknesses. They know this. But and in a sense, for example, the relationship they have with Turkey are not the same. And there are things which are different. We have relationship with the South. They don't have. So in my mind, what I call the growth coalition between France and Germany, for me, is something very essential and very important to have to build up a stronger Europe. Otherwise, we don't have
build up a stronger Europe. Let's hear what the French president had to say. And he agrees with you, Jean-Paul Betbez. There is a grand coalition for the sake of Europe.
What's going to get the French and German governments working together is our goal to give hope to Europe. Firstly, we need rules to be disciplined. But we also need prospects for growth, which are supported by internal demands and also by international competition.
Prospects for growth, Joachim Bitterlich. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but that sounds like a dog whistle message to Berlin saying, hey, why don't you open your purse strings a little more?
Why should we? Jean-Paul Betbez was right to talk about, let's call it a long-term strategy. The Germans know themselves that they have to improve in certain areas. It's true they have a certain surplus on exportation. It's right. But only 2% is about Europe. The whole rest, the famous 6%, is really done vis-à-vis the whole world, not with regard to Europe. They know where weak points on services, yes. And I think, and even on certain points on infrastructure, the Germans can help there. But they can't do it alone. Everyone, even France, has to do its homework. And there François Hollande is totally right. France has still much to do to develop such a long-term strategy. And in this sense, I think Germany and France can be complementary in Europe by tailor-made programs, looking at their specific problems, but tailor-made and complementary for the sake of Europe.
Tailor-made and complementary. Laurent Pincel, what tailor-made program would you like to see the French and Germans work on first?
We should do new Airbus and Ariane, for example. That would be good Europe. And the trouble is, it's not at all the objective of the current European Union. And it is important here to remind people that Airbus and Ariane were born outside the EEC at that time. And that should be the things we should be working on. Clean energy, we should be working on electric car, we should be working on substitutes for oil done with algae. There are many subjects on which we should work, especially industrial policies, but unfortunately nothing, but absolutely nothing has been done. And even the Growth Pact that has been signed when François Hollande arrived in 2012 was nothing. And we have seen it because this year we are in a recession.
All right, pooling resources for major industrial projects and also for defense spending. We're going to pick up on those points. Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.